So, I don't know, it's a matter of perspective. I do get excited about data, but when I look at what Tim does to make the thing behave and actually have rubber hitting the road, I'm really impressed with that. So I'm thrilled to be able to complement what he's doing. And one of the things that he does from that is put out a CSV file. And that CSV file has the data set for each of those different exchanges and the pairs with all the depth of the order book. And he's run that for a period of time and accumulated a historical data set. So that's what I take in and try to make any sense of it that I can. So I'll be looking for patterns, looking for things that we can base algorithmic trades on. And the beauty of this whole operation is that the act of trying to make money is actually helping to smooth, or will be helping to smooth, the irregularities in the price. And it's so extremely volatile right now that that's a deterrent to people's acceptance of these cryptocurrencies. So the very act of everybody just piling on and trying to figure out how to make sense of it and take advantage of the exaggerated pricing will help Bitcoin, and it's fun in the process. So it's like this is a total field day to get going on this. So why focus on price rather than the pipe? Typically, the pipe stuff is really beyond me. I do R, and I love to do data science, and that's where my head is. And I attend the BitCore and look at all that, and that's all terrific, and I want to understand that as well as I can. But the part that I deep dive on is everything pertaining to prices. So price volatility is where my head is, and I want to smooth that out. And so as I see it, that's where the opportunities are for all these things like products, services, trading, and arbing, and coins. Every one of those things can benefit the more reliably you can figure out when the market is out of whack and needs to be whacked. So let me make a comment too on my use of R. So I'm interested, how many people in here use R or have used it? So I'd say that's like, what, 1 in 5 people. So it's a pretty small proportion of people. How many use Python, for instance? I'll be interested in that. So that's maybe a little better, but not that much too. So let me give a little background on R, just to put it in perspective. I'll be showing a little bit of R code and showing some of the capabilities of it.
And Tom, before you go closer, go back about yourself and how you got into it.
Oh yeah. So actually, I've always been interested in oddball valuation. Stuff like trying to figure out. What I was particularly interested in was the valuation of human capital, and so that's what I did my PhD on. And it's the only thing that doesn't show up on a balance sheet or income statement or cash flow, and yet it's what really creates value in a company. And so it has all kinds of issues about it. It's got econometric issues, like can you tease out what the contribution is as it affects bottom line? Can you model that? Because same person in a different setting contributes differently. So there's a lot of messiness to that whole thing. So I rolled up my sleeves, and at Stanford I did it in engineering department, business, statistics, economics, education. I just absorbed all that stuff. So I was going between silos. And so it's like this whole thing with Bitcoin. And then I had gone on to do consulting in fiat currency trading and that kind of thing. But with the advent of the Dodd-Frank law, which increased the capital threshold to be on the order of $10 million in order to do currency trading activity, which was more capital than I had with my business partner. And so that gave rise to the thing of, okay, I need to regroup and go out for institutional funding. And then I got turned on to Bitcoin and got into what Tim was commenting about nobody has a track record there. And so this is like a tremendous opportunity to jump in and you know, figure it out and be on the ground floor. So I think it's an exciting time, and if people in here respond on this, I'd love to work with you and explore that more. So that's why I'm in the game here, and I started using R actually because of the packages that it has and the statistics and machine learning that it has. But then I really don't like the quantitative finance models that are typically used, the GARCH and these other ones. All are based on assumptions that I don't think are appropriate at all for the way the market behaves. So that's led me into writing my own algorithms, and I am still able to use R to write all that script, and it's just continued being a plenty good enough choice of language that I haven't actually learned Python or anything else. I just stick with the R. So that's a shortcoming, but that's what I'm sticking with. So I've developed, by the way, trading systems in R that actually are black boxes and work with an API feed and no human intervention, except for in Terror to go shut the damn thing off if it's got it wrong. And so so R can be used for that. I don't know anything about HTML or HTTP, all those things, but I'm able to put up a website using R too. So I'll show you the demo of that briefly. Okay. Another thing about R is that it's got 5,800 different packages that are statistical and machine learning, really quite disciplined ones. They're well written because they come from universities. There's a big base of it, and that helps account for why R is essentially the most widely distributed and used software for statistics and machine learning, and it's displaced MATLAB and SAS as the top dogs in it, though those are terrific and serve certain communities really well. So it's got 120,000 functions that are out there. It's got a base of people throughout the world that can just about answer any question, so that's definitely a strength of it. It's very fast on vectors and matrix algebra, and with these big data sets that you get with the CSV files. I mean, not big relative to the big data scale, but still they're large. It calculates it very quickly. So the platform's stable and it hasn't forked with different versions of it. It's pretty consistent. The drawbacks are that it's single-threaded and everything operates in memory, and that the development of it is done in silos that are based on the model of the way universities operate rather than the way system developers operate, where there's a shared thing with a GitHub that gets better, faster results. That's why Python has come up so much faster and it is an extraordinary capability, but still R has this established base, and I think it's doing just fine. Okay, so let's get into this thing about the volatility of Bitcoin. So we know it's really volatile. How does it compare, for instance, with the euro-US dollar? Okay, because there were some white knuckle points in the, yes, what?
What's the euro US dollar?
Okay, so in the European Union, they agreed on one unit of currency that they all use, whether you're in Germany or in France or Spain or whatever, and it's called the euro. And if you want to exchange that for a US dollar, then this would be the price in US dollars for each euro. Mm-hmm. So you can see it had a range there. This is over the past 10-year period. And then let's look at gold. Now gold had a big run up and then it got slammed and faltered, and it looks vaguely similar to certain other currencies that we've seen. Okay, so how do they compare? And putting them on one graph so that this is an exponential vertical axis. You can see that the gold, that's that flat line going across the top where the black line just about perfectly matches it, and the light green or turquoise one down at the bottom, that's the euro relative to the dollar, and it's basically a flat line. And then what's this in the middle? That's Mt. Gox and Bitstamp, and that's just an outrageous slope on that sucker. That is awesome. I love it. And it has a lot of variability around it. So, I mean, look at the contrast. So you get an idea. This is just a heyday here. We can do a lot of good and hopefully make a lot of money on this thing.
Tom, are you getting excited right now?
Oh, yeah. Go off, I'll be back. Okay.
Not only that, but it's exponential.
It's right. It is that. And this is supporting kind of a little viewpoint on it too, which the a yellow colored line here is the Mt. Gox total volume per day, where it's basically just the closing price at the end of the day. By the way, the whole concept of day doesn't make any sense on currencies that go around the clock, but there's an arbitrary point at which those are measured. And if you take the number of Bitcoin that were traded in that day on that exchange and multiply it by the price, that's what is represented for Mt. Gox by the yellow line and by Bitstamp for the turquoise line. And you can see that that Bitstamp has accelerated and caught up to where Mt. Gox was. And then if you go across and you look at what that total dollar value is, the height of it up at the top is $100 million. Well, in a day of trading in fiat currencies, they trade essentially $4 trillion each day. So the point is, this is like penny stocks here for the size of it, and that makes it something that's very vulnerable to manipulation. And when the Winklevi come out with their exchange-traded fund, then that's going to be an enormous surge of new capital going into a very limited market. And I don't know, I don't think that line is going to bend down severely at that point. So these are extraordinary times, and it's really cool. So anyway, the point is that the scale of this thing is really at the beginning of it, and we want to get our ducks lined up and get going on this and get the regulators to figure out how to tax us and everything, and then let's get on it. But there's impediments to our capitalizing on it right now, but we'll work through that. Okay, so let's talk about this issue of smoothing that price. So here we have it displayed on a standard metric on the vertical axis, and the magenta line there is the Bitstamp price of in US dollars of the Bitcoin. And this was just a simple-minded little signal based on a moving average, a short-term moving average compared with a longer-term moving average that would say when the short-term moving average, which is more responsive to change, dips down below the longer-term one, meaning that in the short run looks like the market's turning down, then let's get out of the thing and just go to cash. So this isn't actively taking a short position, which is a bit of a challenge right now to make sure that you can participate in a downward turn. So let's just say we get out of it. Well, it looks like the behavior of that dark blue line is better. It's nicer. It doesn't have the quite the severe downdrafts that it had, and it missed out on a little bit of the up, but that's perhaps a good transaction. So if you could achieve that, that's good. There's we'll get into some problems with that. It's not just that easy to step aside and, oh, I'll go to cash now, because that's where everybody goes to the exit, and all of a sudden there aren't enough of those limit orders to absorb it. So it's just like you just severely, you pay dearly for the fact that to get out of it, you're going to have to accept a much lower price than you wanted to. So, so here's the first R graph, which is a pretty modest little one. I can't say I'm a good R grapher here, but this is from the CSV file, and this was just a little snapshot showing what the bid-ask spread and the order book looks like for this was for Bitstamp for Bitcoin expressed in US dollars for the year 2014, June 6th at 7:41 in the afternoon. Okay, we're getting there. What you're seeing on the right is a minute-to-minute snapshot of the order book as it's changing. So you can see the time going along. It's 4:20 in the afternoon on the 6th, and you can see on the bottom there that the price is around 650 approximately, and you can.
How do we beat that?
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't understand why it's not wide, but the horizontal axis there is the price of the Bitcoin going from like 646 up to 680 or something, and on the vertical axis, that is the number of Bitcoins that you could buy at those, that are being offered on the ask on the right and the bid on the left. And now it's getting active because it's at about 7 o'clock at night, and the Asian market had just started at that point.
What are the empty? Are they all empty circles that are overlapping, or are there empty circles and are there filled circles?
They're empty circles, and where they overlap sufficiently, it looks like they're filled. So there are 100 data points on the bid side and 100 on the ask side. And you can see about 70 of them on the ask side.
So this is a replay of data on June 6th?
Yes, so it's a snapshot in that CSV file, and all I did was take it and say, give me the increments and display them for 0.2 seconds each.
So using R, there's a time column, and using R it animates the
yes,
chart like
it calls it system sleep, and I told it to sleep for 0.2 seconds, and then an increment would go through the next one. That's the code that's in the upper left side of this. How many people use RStudio? Have you ever? So there are a few people. Okay, well that's the upper left quadrant. There is the code itself. The lower left is the console view of what that code produced, and then this is that display. Okay, so going back to the display. So that was the kind of gave you the idea of how animated this order book is. All right, this slide I can't really account for completely. I found it on Highcharts.com, and there were a whole series of them that showed what happened on June 12th and 13th, and these are in 1 hour or 2 hours on the bottom of it, and something big happened in each hour at 23 minutes after the hour. It looks like there was a big purchase that was being submitted as this hourly interval order. And look at the enormous, that person was paying quite differently from what either other people are being paid for or what's being presented. I have no idea what's actually going on there. I'm just saying that there's a lot of funky stuff out there.
What exchange was this?
I don't know. I tried to trace it down. It is presented through this thing called Highcharts.com, but they didn't really reveal it. And they had a lot of other charts that were for the same period. This is for the British pound versus the Bitcoin, and it's showing those same ones. The reason I included this was funkiness. That's a key theme, and that's something that Tim and I want to get into, is tentatively putting in orders and seeing what the fills are, seeing what the slippage is, seeing what kind of magic is happening in the way they fill it. What's that matching engine like? One for me, one for you, kind of thing. We need to find that out, because whatever that order book says is the number may not be what you actually get. So, but the other thing I wanted to show is that the first one, the graph just here, had to do with the Bitcoin versus US dollar, and but everything is attached to each other, so it will affect the relationship to each other currency cross pair, and that's where the arbitrage comes in. It's where the anticipation of a ripple effect from something can set you up to capitalize on it. So it's just a way of alerting ourselves to it. This was where I was going to show what I showed you 3/4 of a while ago, and so that was running in the on an AWS instance using RStudio and R. Okay, now we're going to get into the arbitrage itself. Okay, so can we do any good with these exchanges that are out there? And in a simple-minded way, I just went through looking for straightforward arbing. Okay, in other words, can we find somewhere where the bid price is above the ask price and just jump on it? I mean, do such things exist? And so this little sample that we had includes, you can see under this base quotes column that it's got the BTC for the Chinese yuan, the euro, and by the time you get down to the green one there, the Bitcoin USD, and you go across, you can see that the bid compared with the ask between Bitfinex and BTCEE had a 1.89% apparent arbitrage opportunity there. So big exclamation mark in the note column. And same down for that same exchange pair, but for the Litecoin versus US dollar, that looked like it was profitable. Oh, and I missed also the Litecoin and BTC in the reverse exchange order had a little tiny net profit, 0.17%. But of course, all of that has all of these other issues behind it that would account for why there would be a persistent distortion. So it isn't as good an opportunity as it may appear. And then this other snapshot is at 10 o'clock the next morning instead of 3 in the afternoon. And it shows a persistent nearly 2% difference between them that still occurs. Okay, so that's just a straightforward one between different exchanges or broker-dealers that for a particular pair. But the beauty of it is that if you take any given pair, you may be able to find another 2 or 3 or more combinations together which give you an implied exchange rate on the one that you're wanting to compare it with, so that you can test all combinations of those and determine if there is what's called a triangular arbitrage opportunity. And this company named Priceonomics had a little puzzle which said, can you find the best two currency plus Bitcoin arbitrage between three currencies in a live data stream? And they provided the live data stream, and so I submitted a solution to it, and I'll show you that solution now. And so essentially, you can display the bid and ask prices in a neat little matrix that allows you to say, okay, if you go from these currencies in the left-hand column there to the ones across the column heads, then if this is interpreted as for each single US dollar, you could get 0.78 euros for it. That would be the interpretation of it. Or if you were going from euros to US dollars, 1 euro would get you $1.28. So that's how that looks. And I mapped it in from a JSON sequence or feed. And this is the R script for it. It's too small to read probably, but it's not that much script, and everything's sort of self-explanatory. If you just sit and read it, then you go, oh, I get it. You know, that one, it's the way it is for most of us, for me at least, for the whole thing. And
how long it took you to put together the script?
Well, I'll tell you, the script wasn't hard to put together, but putting it into the Shiny app that puts it onto the web so that you can access it with a browser, that I beat my head against the wall for weeks on that, honestly. And then it all becomes self-evident, and you go, oh, God, if I only knew that. So I tried to do it, I think, relatively early on with the development of Shiny, so that I think they've got it down better, and it can be done better. So then how many of you use a cloud service like AWS? Okay, so that's like maybe a little bit more than half, maybe it looked like. So that's good. So just for those that don't, for AWS, if you buy things through Amazon, you already have an account, and then you just go into the area for AWS and sign up for their EC2, which is their elastic computing module. I didn't need more storage data. They work out the private key for you. I needed a static IP, and I could get that, and then I configured this Amazon machine instance that's medium size, and then I had to configure it with Windows because one of my data sources, I'm presently downloading, as we're talking, I have a live stream of 250 live data streams that I accumulate all the time into the data set that I use for fiat currency trading. So this was cool because I didn't have to worry about whether the dog chewed through my cable at my home office or something like that. So I like it a lot better. And then I have this little URL called Next One Up, and I will. Oh shoot! Now I'm going to show you, and we may be hours again trying to get this sorted out. But what I will do is show you, and you can probably do it on your cell phone too, and we'll blow it up probably because I don't know what the capacity is of it. But here, so now we're we're launching nextoneup.com, and this is the app that I wrote in Shiny that took that little code that I wrote and put it into a UI and into a server configuration so that the UI is what's displaying it here and the server is what calculates it. And so I choose the home currency. I can choose US dollars, for instance, and let's say I want to do $100, and then relying on this bogus synthetic data feed that Priceonomics has made available, then I can just press find the best one now, and the best one now based on US dollars. And you can see that this is really old data because it's got
Can you make it bigger?
I don't know that I can.
Control plus.
Yeah. I'll read it to you, okay? Trade 100 US dollars to 73.93 euros, and you get, and then trade that to 0.94 Bitcoin, and then when you come out at the other end and convert that back into dollars, you'll have $98.40. So it's not a good one. That's not what we.
Just do it the other way around.
Well, that is the best way you can do it, with starting with US dollars and ending with US dollars, because it just kind of mindlessly powers through that looking for the best combination, and it ain't there. There's nothing good from that way. But let's check and see if we specified our home currency as euros. That isn't good either. It's minus 2% that we could lose there. Okay, well, let's try it and see if we start off with Japanese yen. Yes, they're, according to this, if we traded 100 yen, which isn't a big commitment, we would. Let's jack up the commitment so it's a little bit more reasonable. And so we got 100,000. Now we could get nearly 800 euro, which translates to 10 bitcoins at $104, and then back into an 8% increase in it. So that interactive capability, it changes every second because the JSON feed changes it so that it is all updated, and all that's done in R, huh? Let's see, where are we? Oh, okay. Yes. The reason is because this particular synthetic data feed, meaning it's fake data that got specified according to some rules that some coder wrote, was done clear back when Bitcoin was around $100. So you can almost tell at what month it must have been done, if we were to go back. That's why. And it just never got updated because this isn't something that's driving very much.
Do you have this attached to your 250 real sources, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm getting that from, like one of the vendors is eSignal. They're an aggregator of data, so I subscribe to a bunch of different indexes and exchanges to get the data there. And they give it out in DDE link, which is just totally Neolithic, it's Paleolithic. It's really bad. And that's what's forced me to stay in the Windows environment in the AWS instance that I have.
So you're working on attaching it to all the real data, or that's private, or?
That's just private, yeah. That's my...
So you have this real answer of the live best arbitrage pair right now somewhere hidden?
No, I don't. I haven't actually hooked this up to that. I'm writing the code now that is completely capable of an indefinite number of exchanges and currency pairs, and those could be crypto or could be fiat, and that's what I'm working on with Tim, to take the CSV file that he throws at me with anything in it, and it just can accept it.
Do you need help with that?
I would love, to coordinate with people on different things. That one, there are aspects to it. Yeah, I have to think it through.
Can I ask? So
Yeah,
this
sure.
one says you get an 8.39 crores gain. Sounds like a lot, but
Right.
how much? Because you're taking a risk jumping through these 2 or 3 different currencies.
Yes.
It takes some time.
Yes.
So should it be 0.5 that it makes sense, or should it be 2% before trading makes sense? Like,
Yeah, I
is there
don't
a
know
risk?
what the answer to that is yet, but it's got to be it's very difficult actually to write what the right rules should be on a synthetic data set so that it would come out with realistic numbers. And so they kind of got it generally close. But disregarding the synthetic data for a moment and answering the question like, okay, what should the targets be? We really need to find out like what the slippage is, what on earth the difference is between that point in time where you commit to that transaction and what goes on with the matching engine and the fills and all of this stuff. At any given point in time between banks, like in Singapore versus London, you'll find, surprisingly, that there are persistent differences between it. And those have to do with everything from creditworthiness or the clients that are being served at that point in time or the terms around the transaction. So it's just amazing to me, even in such a liquid market, that you have those differentials. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are substantial differences here. I think you had made a comment about the BTCE having a requirement that is different. So there are all kinds of other factors that weigh into it. And it's an empirical thing to just wade out into it tentatively and not leap in, because you'll be devoured in it. I don't know whether that answered that.
This is.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how long this kind of opportunity might last? Or does it evaporate in milliseconds, in minutes, or?
Yeah, I honestly don't. I'm not even sure that it is. I mean, it's a potential opportunity, because I'm not even sure. I gather there are people. Do people know of people making money in this right now with arbitrage and so forth?
Yeah. Not at the level that you're doing it at, no. So one of the things is that the persistent illiquidity discourages a lot of big money.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen anybody actually do the research. To Tim's point, a lot of people don't believe the data is good data.
Yeah.
So even if the data is bad data, there's a skepticism. But what you're showing me here, I mean, we've had people come to us say we want to do, this type of arbitrage, but nobody's been, big enough to do it. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like this.
That's cool. Yeah, this is, the platform that Tim's done, it's just like, whoa, this is way cool, because there's a lot of discipline and knowledge that you and your brother and the team with Phil that have gone into this, that is just really grounded. I mean, it's not just casual stuff, like as Tim's describing.
If I could add, most of the traders I know who are doing automated trading on the APIs are really competing against pump and dumpers who are very predictable. The first 2 weeks of a coin, it launches, so they buy into it. They can call a top, once they see certain trade, momentum slowing down. Currently, the state of the art is very primitive and very much against, unsophisticated day traders. This is a different level of play.
So, just as another key design concept that seems important to me is that I'm picturing that each of these exchanges you would have a set of accounts with holding these different currencies in them, and that you initiate a trade, even a triangular arbitrage trade, where all of them are all initiated simultaneously. You don't have to go through the sequence of all of them and wait for 10 minutes or longer to have it verified. You just initiate them all at the same time, so you capture that and just provide for all of the accounts to be able to absorb the transactions as you do them. But then you have to look at it as a management of a total portfolio rather than just this isolated trade. So that adds another layer of complexity on it that you have to be on top of. That interactive display where it presents to you the current information and allows you to make a choice off of it is remarkable, in the sense that actually that enables you to monitor and control a live trading process, for instance, because you could be if you didn't trust your black box to be working and you just wanted to monitor it, it could display its present trading behavior and have a little panic button that you could press on and say, adios, I don't need that. I need to go back to sleep, you know. And that, so I'm just trying to justify why I still only know R. Okay, now we're into the final phase of what I was, shoot, man, I've been a long time here. Let me just power through this. Okay, this is the machine learning part, which is where it gets, aside from the direct arbitrage or triangular arbitrage things, it's like, okay, let's press harder on this. Let's see if we can find patterns in what's going on, from which we can make predictions or make classifications. So by predictions, I mean what kind of expected movement in the base price might we be looking at, or just the simple up or down as a classification thing, okay? So if that's our dependent variable, then let's work out how we can construct the rules that would guide us into this and rely on the machine learning to do all the arithmetic for us. So we need lots of raw current data, and CoinTrader is set up to provide that. So just give me those big CSV files. And then first step that I do is I characterized it as coding up the savvy features. And by features, I'm meaning the variables that characterize or describe the this order book and the patterns of activity. But by savvy, I mean ones that require domain knowledge of finance, so that it isn't just like casual, irrelevant data points. I mean, I want the ones that are putting their finger right square on that's what you look for when you're looking at an order book. I want to see what the movement was. Is it, like Tim was saying, being chewed out by a bunch of people that are all moving in the same way? I want to know that when that happens, and so I want to create those variables that define the edges that characterize that kind of movement, because that's a key kind of movement. Okay, and you just need to forget, at least in my view, all of the academic models and everything. Those are all based on assumptions, like auto-regressive, heteroscedastic models is just like blah. They're based on assumptions that are about volatility, but the time periods that they're talking about are not adaptive, so that they are very imprecise measure, and they persist in still writing about them, and more power to them. Keep them tied up, all the smart people working on the dumb stuff. That's perfect. I mean, we can make money. And then use, so instead I like to use nonlinear models, and my hero or model on use of these nonlinear methods is Peter Norvig at Google, and he's the guru behind the incredible capabilities in search and in translate. You know that the translate thing with, 33 languages or more that can go between Arabic and Hebrew or Sanskrit, that they don't even have people that know the grammar in those different languages that they're doing the translation through. And the way they do it is through very data-intensive machine learning processes. And that's what I think needs to be applied here, and not try to figure out what the curve should be. Just go for it with the data. And one of the key principles, the cardinal sin, is overfitting. That's where you have this powerful algorithm that can sort out the relationship between the data and the dependent variable that you're trying to do. But it's so powerful that if you let it go too far, it'll have figured out perfectly for that data set, and you present a new data set to it, and it falls flat on its face because it isn't relevant. That's what's meant by the overfitting. and also this thing about the future. It's so easy to be misguided by thinking that you have this historical data set that will inform you, but actually the historical data set has elements of the future that have been interjected into it, such as data that is has been corrected or updated so that at that point in time it wouldn't have been there, or there's a survivor bias where the fact that it's made it all the way through there would make you miss out on the opportunities that didn't make it all the way to the end that would have actually been more realistic. So steps to build robust algorithms and rules so that you can do all this trading, hedging, and placing order limits. The way I started with it is just to write primitives that are these features. So, for instance, mid-quote is a concept that is really simple. It's whatever the midpoint is between the best bid and ask. That's going to be a good reference point as a single number. Another is what's the difference between the two. That's the spread. And then another would be how far away, let's say, is the 25th limit order from the mid-quote, and or the 50th quote away, because that's a measure that is part of how steep that slope is. And you can just continue on down the list and produce a whole bunch of these primitives. Then you take those and you fully feature them by taking those and taking differences, taking exponential moving averages, taking rate of changes, other things like that. Then that starts to tell you, oh, the market's going up or down or sideways. Those others were just snapshots of it. And then ideally, you take the data and you make a training set and you make a testing set. So you train the data on one set of data, and then you test it against another set. Then when you find that, that didn't work very well, so you go back and you revise it, and then you retest it, and you keep doing that and doing that for a while, and then you have a product, which is the product of both of those two data sets, and you still have to have a third data set, which is the one that you've held back in reserve. Okay, now you think you're good. Let's try it out. You smart model, let's see how smart you are. And try it on data it's never seen. And if it falls flat on its face, then you've overfitted the thing. And you need to start over. You'll be able to salvage parts of what you have. But the point is that you can't, you have to have that kind of discipline. And then in answer to your question about like holding out every seventh one, if you randomly hold out ones, that's called bagging. And you can just take random ones, come out with a model, and look for which variables show up in all of these different analyses that have been done by different random sets. And you do the same thing also with the variables. You hold out different variables and see if some of them, when they are held out, they didn't make any difference. But some of them, when they're held out, it makes a big difference. That's called boosting. And then you do the boosting and the bagging on these things. And it's just like you're shredding that data. You're just grinding out every bit of information you can possibly get from it. And that's what you use to find out what the most robust variables are. And then you end up being able to tease out where the strongest ones are. So the models include trees and random forests and generalized linear models, and, genetic algorithms, and genetic programming, where the difference between those, the genetic programming is just completely free form. It'll just come up with all kinds of other things, whereas the genetic algorithms are exploring variations in the parameters of a relatively static model. So I'm just saying that you've got this whole inventory of methods that you can use, and then you can even take the best results of those and ensemble them together so that you end up with a voting kind of criteria, like, well, these 20, this is the way they say to go. And so then using the final code, then that can be put back into the CoinTrader, or if we wanted to, we could have it be provided as a signal from the outside source, and then just put that in and make trades off of it.